Hey guys, take a look at this flimsy fence here. This fence is about 20 years old. Pretty much most of the wood is rotten to the ground. The posts are extremely weak, and we actually had a crazy wind a few days ago and it broke off a big section of this fence. Now, if you want to learn how to make a beautiful fence by yourself and save yourself a bunch of time and money, please make sure to sit back and watch this video till the end. I'm pretty confident you're gonna like this video because I simplified it so much that I'm pretty sure you're gonna be able to build something like this over a weekend. And hey, if you're new here, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more renovation related videos. Now, before any further delay, let's get into the process. So the very first thing I did was to demolish this one, and to do that, I grabbed my sawzall and I cut down all the connection between the posts and the fence sections that were left, and then I pushed it down and the fence came down. This whole process pretty much took us about 20 to 30 minutes because the fence was in such a bad shape, it was coming off super nice and easy. As you can see it here, all the fence boards were removed. It's time to remove that last post. I got Hercules to break it off, and as you can see, it broke off right from the very bottom portion. Before I show you how to build a fence, please make sure to contact your local building department and ask them for all the information. In some areas, you might require a building permit, and also the height and minimum setback requirements might be different in different estates, so please make sure to double check beforehand before you even jump into this process. If you don't know the exact location of your property lines, you can contact someone that does property survey in your area. They can come over and tell you where exactly your property lines are located so you can build your fence accordingly. Pretty soon in this video, you're gonna see us drilling holes for the new fence posts. Please be aware that you have to contact your local locate company so they can come and mark the exact location of all the gas pipes, water lines, and also the electrical lines that are buried under the ground anywhere in your property before you actually start jumping into this process. Keep in mind, it is the law, and in many states there's a fine for it if you don't contact them. So please make sure to be on the safe side and contact them before you dig. With all that said, let's get into the actual job. From my local Home Depot, I rented this 2-man auger to dig the holes for my new post. They have different sizes of auger bits for this device. I actually picked the biggest one because I want the fence post to be extremely strong and sturdy when it's done. There's so many different machinery that you can rent out to do the post hole digging process, especially if you have to dig so many holes for a bigger fence. Also, if you go on Google and look for someone that does post hole digging services in your local area, I'm pretty confident you're gonna find someone that does this service for a very reasonable price, especially if you have to do so many post holes. I measured about 6 feet from the very last post in the backside of the backyard and placed a scrap piece of wood there, so this is going to be indicating my first post. My previous sections were at 8 foot, this first section that I just marked is at 6 foot, and now I'm going to measure the rest of these sections at 7.5 feet away. So this way when I'm drilling these new holes, I'm not going to hit the old post and the concrete buried under the ground. Now that I know the approximate location of every post, it's time to drill our first hole. The key is to keep this machine straight and let the actual weight of the machine drill into the ground. Do not try to force it in. We continued doing this until that hole was about 3.5 feet deep. And then we throw about 3.5 inches of crushed stone at the very bottom portion of the hole, and that's for water drainage purpose. We decided to use 6x6 posts to make this fence extremely strong and windproof. As you can see it here, I used the actual weight of the 6x6 post to compact that crushed stone at the very bottom part of the hole. Just make sure the type of pressure treated wood that you're going to be using for this project is rated for ground contact. Most of the times there's a tag at the very bottom part of the lumber and it tells you if it's rated for ground contact or not. I use my level to make sure that the post is sitting nice and straight, and then I put some scrap pieces of wood around it and use them as a leg. I screwed it to the actual post to make sure that it stays in place while I'm working on the rest of the post. After I made sure that the post is sitting super nice and straight, I poured some of this concrete at the very bottom part of the hole. I pushed it around the entire area to make sure there's no voided area, and then I compacted it down using one of the old 4x4 posts. I repeated this until the hole was filled up around 4 inches below the grade. So it is a specialty kind of a concrete. It's designed for fence posts like this one. All you need to do is to pour it around the actual post. You have to compact it next, and then you have to water it down. After a few hours, it's gonna sit and be extremely strong and rock solid. After setting this post, I used the masonry line and connected this post all the way to the very end post at the very end of the backyard. This is going to work as a straight line, and basically when I'm trying to make the holes for the new post, I know where exactly to make them. So when you look at these posts right at the very end when the job is done, All of them are going to be extremely nice and lined up. Now that I have this fence post in place, I measured 7.5 feet away from this and placed a piece of wood as a reference for myself for the next post, and I continued this all the way to the end. The reason why I'm marking them at 7.5 feet apart is because I'm going to be using 8-footer lumber for the rails on this fence. Now that we know the exact location of every post, it's time to drill the rest of the post holes. Again, we have to keep the machine straight and let the actual weight of the machine drill into the ground. Just be patient with it and allow the machine to go as deep as it can possibly get into the ground. The freeze line in my area is about 4 feet down, and this machine did an amazing job reaching that depth. Now that all the holes are ready, I'm going to throw a little bit of a stone in the bottom of every hole, and then I'm going to put a 6x6 post inside of every one of them. Again, I'm going to be using the post to compact the stone at the bottom of the hole. And by the way, if I forgot to tell you, these posts are 6x6 by 10 foot long. One more time, I use the masonry twine to connect the first and last post. This way I have a nice reference. So when I'm trying to level up these posts, I kind of put them right next to this twine, and it's going to end up being super nice and lined up. I stand up the posts inside every hole and make sure that it's staying away from that masonry twine about 1/8 of an inch. Basically, we're offsetting our post about 1/8 of an inch away from that twine that we just installed between the first and last post. This way, our fence is going to end up being super nice and straight, and that 1/8 of an inch offset is not going to be visible whatsoever at the end of the job. After making sure that the post is sitting on the right spot, I use some scrap pieces of wood and screw it right to the post, making sure the post is staying nice and straight. This way, when I'm pouring the concrete inside these holes, the post doesn't move and it stays nice and straight. I repeat this process for every single post here, and at the end I went over every single post and I made sure that every one of them are sitting nice and straight, and at the same time I double checked every single post to make sure that they're sitting super nice and sturdy in place before I actually pour the concrete in there. Now it's time to pour that concrete around the post and compact it down. I normally use one bag at a time. Basically, I pour it around the actual post, I compact it down, and then I throw a little bit of water on it, and then I repeat the process with the next bag. Basically, I pour the next bag in, I'm going to compact it down a little bit, and then I'm going to apply a little bit of water to it until this hole is completely filled up. I normally stop pouring the concrete about 4 inches below the actual dirt level. This is the next day and the concrete is completely dried up and it's rock solid. So the first thing that I did the next day was to remove all those leg supports that I installed yesterday. Now I have all these posts sitting in the right spot and they're very nice and solid. I pulled the masonry twine from one side of the fence to the other side, one on the very top and one on the very bottom portion. The one on the top is sitting about 6 foot 3 inches from the ground, and the one on the bottom is sitting about 5 inches higher than the actual dirt level. And the reason why I measured it higher, it's because I'm going to be using 6-footer fence boards and I don't want them to have any contact with the ground. And then I use my square and a pencil to draw 2 lines on both sides of these posts, exactly where that masonry twine is located. Basically, these 2 marks are going to be the very top portion of my railing, which I'm going to be installing it in a few minutes from now. I put my square against the post and I drew a line at 2 inches. And then I drew another line at 3.5 inches. And then I turned my square the other way and left the mark at 5.5 inches below the first mark that I made. That's going to be the exact center of that 6x6 post, and also it's going to indicate the exact location of the fence rail that I'm going to be installing in a little bit. I got some of these fence rail brackets from my local hardware store, and I used 2 decking screws to attach this to the actual posts. As you can see it here, I located on the very bottom part of that mark that I just made previously. And I repeated this for all of my fence posts. And then the same way I pulled the line from the very center part and installed brackets on the center of the post also. This way I'm going to have 3 rails on it, and when this fence is done, it's going to be extremely windproof. This fence is supposed to end in between these 2 properties, so I installed a piece of 2x6 to the wall of this house and I used tap corner screws to keep it in place. Now we got ourselves an end piece. I used my level to transfer the marks for the actual brackets, and then I put the brackets in place. Now it's time to install the rails. I normally cut them a little bit tight and drive them in with my hammer. Again, to make this fence extremely strong and windproof, I used 2x6 pressure treated lumber here for the rails. If you want this fence to last a long time, every time you make a cut on these pressure treated lumber, it's a good idea to use a product like this, Cut and Seal. It comes in a thin liquid form. All you need to do is to brush it on and then install your pieces together. And then we repeat this for all the other sections. This is how it looks like after the railing was installed on all of these sections. To attach the rails to the posts, I used these 3-inch decking screws. I put one screw in on the very top part, and then I used one for each side of it. And then I used these smaller screws to attach the rail to the actual brackets. There's also a small hole on the very bottom part of this bracket. Make sure to put a screw in that one as well. You could definitely use nails if you want to. Now to fancy it up and make it look super nice, I installed this piece of 2x4 on the very top rail. I just put it in place, eyeballed it, and then I put some screws in it so it sits in place. And then I repeated this for all the other sections. Now it's time to install those fence boards. As far as the design here, there's so many different ways to do this. This specific design is what I've been asked to do here. There's actually a very good reason for doing this design, and I'm going to explain that in a little bit. I normally use my coil nailer to install these fence boards, but on that specific day I didn't have it in my truck, so I just decided to use my brad nails. So the brad nails are going to keep these fence boards in place for temporary only, and then I'm going to use the screws to fasten them down to the actual rails. For the spacing, as you can see it here, I'm using a scrap piece of 2x4. I just put it in between these fence boards when I'm nailing it. This way they're going to be spaced correctly and properly. If you want to install your fence boards the same design and you want to have more privacy in your backyard or your neighbor's backyard, you can install them a little bit closer if you want to. The rest of the process is just a repeat of this. We're going to continue this until all these fence boards are completely done. Sometimes you may have to rip a few of these fence boards when it gets to the end parts or basically where the actual posts are located. So it's not a big deal. You can use a table saw and cut them down and then install them. Obviously, make sure to apply that cut and seal product that I showed you earlier to all these rips and cuts that you make on these boards. So this way the fence is going to last a long time. Of course, make sure to use the screws or nails to attach these fence boards to the rails. For some reason, I don't have the footage. Maybe I forgot to film it. But I'm pretty sure you get the idea. With this type of fence, the wind can escape from these empty areas, and that's what makes it extremely durable against wind. I left a mark on all the posts about 6 inches higher than the actual fence height. And then I used my square to draw a nice and a square line. And then I got my sawzall and cut the post right onto the mark. I bought some of these post caps, and then I put them on top of the actual posts, and then I used 4 nails to keep them in place. At this point, we're completely done with the actual building of this fence. As you can see, it turned out super nice and beautiful. Now, if you want to learn how to make a beautiful gate like this one, a gate that can stand the test of time and is extremely strong against crazy winds, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and watch my next video. There's a lot of cool tips and tricks in that one, which I'm pretty confident you don't want to miss. As a part of this project, I also had to roll a lot of sod in this backyard. If you're interested in learning how to do that by yourself and save yourself a bunch of time and money, please make sure to watch that video as well. And one more time, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please don't forget to do so. There's a bunch of cool videos in this channel. I'm pretty confident you're gonna like a lot of my content. And like always, thanks a lot for watching my videos. See you in the next one. Till then, peace.